Yo, 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 what's good? We out here. It's Above Missionary back again with another video. And it's been a while. So, hey, we glad to be back. And you might notice it looks a little bit different. Hopefully, you notice a little upgraded quality here. I'm new to this whole thing. I've been recording these videos on my iPhone so far, but we got an actual camera in the building. It's exciting. First camera I've ever really owned. And I'm excited to bring this to you in this format. Hopefully it looks good. We're trying to step the quality game up around here. But anyways, as you all know, we're going through the book Steps to Christ. Like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell so you don't miss any new videos. And hopefully you hit the bell before so you're getting this video right now, but hit it again so you don't miss the next one's coming up. But these last couple weeks, check out the other videos just so you know what I've been up to. It's been busy, but it's been a really good time, a good adventure, and I'm glad to be getting back into this. And with that being said, the last couple weeks I've been able to really go over this next section here many times. And every time I read it, I got something new, something else stood out to me. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you here today. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Adam and Eve persuaded themselves that in so small a matter as eating the forbidden fruit, there could not result such terrible consequences as God had declared. Now think about it. Adam and Eve are put in the Garden of Eden, and out of all the good that's there, they're given pretty much one directive: be fruitful, multiply, all of that, but one condition as well, which was not to eat from one tree. They could eat from any tree, any plant in the entirety of the Garden of Eden except for one. Now, I was actually having a conversation with a good buddy of mine yesterday, and she was asking, like, why was this put there? Why was that challenge put there? And I'm going to submit to you that the reason the choice or the option for that tree is there is actually reflective on who God is. The Bible tells us that God is love, and love involves choice. Think about it in the sense of any basic relationship, all right? If someone, let's say you have a couple people, they're in a relationship, right? And one of them wants something for the other one, whether it's good or if it's bad. If they don't give them the opportunity to choose and they're forcing them to it, you can force someone to do something that's good for them. You can also force someone to do something that's bad for them. Either way, it's not good, and it's not based in love because you didn't give them the option. So for God to be love, he has to give you a choice. He has to give us free will, even if the choice results in us rejecting him. It's a crazy concept to wrap our minds around. But when we're talking about love and what that actually means, it means the giving of a choice. It can't be love, and it can't be willful love if the person cannot choose to love you. Okay? That might be speaking to a lot of y'all and some of y'all's relationships out here. I don't know, man. I'm not a guru, all right? But if it applies, cool. If it don't, let it fly, all right? But the idea still stands. There must be a choice for there to be love. Otherwise, it is not love, okay? God is love, so he has to offer a choice, even if the choice would result in him being rejected. That is love. That's love. So when we talk about this, the terrible consequences that come from that, we're essentially asking the question, well, what's the cost of rejecting God's love? Ultimately, that's the question. What is the cost of rejecting God's love? When you look at a God who's willing to do everything for us, we talked about the sacrifice of Christ. We talk about God giving Adam and Eve the entire world and just giving them like a playground to grow and to develop in with only one condition. What is the cost of rejecting God's love? Now, the other aspect of this is that look at the wording that's used here. It says, Adam and Eve persuaded themselves that in so small a matter as eating of the forbidden fruit. And when you look at it, it does seem kind of small, right? Like they were given everything, and it's just this little piece of fruit that's going to throw the whole thing off. Really? Like that's it? God, are you serious? That like just from biting the fruit? They didn't do that much. But again, what did it really stand for, right? But check this out. Don't we do the same thing? How many times have we rationalized within ourselves that the thing that we're doing, the thing that we're going to listen to, the thing that we're going to watch, the thing that we're going to do, it's not that big a deal. It doesn't really matter. I could do it this time. It's not that deep. And so we do it knowing that the thing that we're doing, the thing that we're watching, the thing that we're experiencing is not good. We make choices and we rationalize them within ourselves to give ourselves the excuse to go ahead and do it and think, it's not that deep. God shouldn't care that much about this. But what are we really doing? Is it just making a choice that doesn't matter here or there, or are we rejecting God's love? What is the cost of rejecting God's love? And it's interesting because when we look at the Bible, a lot of people might assume that, well, if you reject God's love, then God is going to take active action against you. And again, I'll submit to you that this is an incorrect approach, because we have to view it more in the sense of what's actually happening here, which is like a protective barrier that God's love is around us. And when we reject the barrier, we have no more protection. So we've exposed ourselves to something else. All right? Let's go back to Adam and Eve. What was the thing that they were being protected from by avoiding the tree? The introduction of sin into humanity. And once they rejected God's love and God's word and his counsel in avoiding the tree, they opened themselves up to the problem of sin. The same thing happened in heaven with Lucifer. The same thing happened with Adam and Eve with the serpent and the tree. The same thing happens to us now when we reject God's love. It's not that God is taking active action against us. We are opening ourselves up to the attacks of the enemy. We are opening ourselves up and we're leaving. It's like if you tore off all your skin, how much would that hurt? That's kind of grotesque. It's like Hannibal Lecter up in here or something like that. But if you lose your protection, if you lose the thing that's covering you and keeping you safe, life is going to be a whole lot more painful, guaranteed. That's the essence of what's happening here when Lucifer, as the head angel of heaven, rejects God's love. That's what happens when Adam and Eve reject God's love. That's what happens when we reject God's love and we choose things that God has counseled against. We are opening ourselves up to a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. And humanity has experienced this for years. This is what's happening, okay? So it's not something so small. Going back to the language here, it wasn't something that was so small. It was a big deal. It was a big deal, and it had huge consequence. Not that God got mad at them for doing that. We see that in the continuation of the story. But God understood that they were exposing themselves. They were opening themselves up to something completely different that was going to be very painful. It was a big deal. There were terrible consequences, as God had told them and warned them from the jump. We know this beforehand. A lot of times we don't make decisions to do things we shouldn't do without knowing exactly what the consequences and negative impact will be. We know it, and somehow we tell ourselves that those things are not going to happen, and yet they do, and we act surprised, and we blame God for it. Isn't that something? Continuing on, it says, "But this small matter was the transgression of God's immutable and holy law, and it separated man from God and opened the floodgates of death and untold woe upon our world." Exactly what we're saying here. It took away the barrier, and untold woe, untold horror became the experience of humanity. You think of all the bad things that are happening in the world today. You think of all the people whose free will is being robbed by other people who decide to take their lives. I saw a stat a couple weeks ago. I hope it's still not accurate right now or current, but it was something like there were more mass shootings than there were days in the year in 2023 here. We're about 30, not even 40 days in, and there's that many mass shootings already in America. That's crazy. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on, people robbing each other of their own free will. That's part of the effect of sin. We can't act like it's not a big deal. It is. Every choice we make matters. Now, the choices that I make and the choices that you make might not be on that level, but they still matter. They still matter. When we get separated from God, when we get separated from that barrier of protection, his love for us. And I'll say this here as well. It's not just that God's love protects us in the sense like, oh, we're never going to experience anything bad ever. I don't know if that's possible in a world full of sin. We're going to be impacted and touched by it somehow. But by having God on our side and by having that extra coating of protection, our minds can be better equipped to handle and to understand the things that we see, even though most of it is beyond comprehension. We can have a peace because of the hope that we have in God, in appreciating his love for us and what that means for us through the sacrifice of Christ. That can give us a hope and a positivity going through life that a lot of people don't have because they don't believe in Christ. Okay? So there's a little bit of a nuance there that I definitely want to make sure of. And I think that's obvious if you've seen some of my other videos talking about my mom and some of the crap that my family's had to deal with. It's very clear that I'm not dodging any bullets when it comes to when it comes to living an easy life, because we're not. We're not. I love God, but this life and this experience is tough. All right? We're not missing anything here. It says, age after age, there has gone up from our earth, a continual cry of mourning, and the whole creation groans and labors together in pain as a consequence of man's disobedience. Everything has been impacted. And it goes to show again, like, we don't really understand or take into consideration just how much influence our actions have. I said before that every action we take, every decision that we make, it's not a small thing. It is a big deal. And a lot of that is because of the other people that'll impact. There are things that we do, decisions that we make in the moment that don't seem to have any change on our own existence, but how are they impacting the people around us? How do the things that we do change the lives of others? Do we sit back and think about that before making those decisions? Or do we channel into our own selfish human nature more often than not? That's what we do. And only think about how the decision impacts me. Right? So there's such a bigger picture to this that we have to try to become aware of in our day-to-day and in our daily decisions that we make. It says, heaven itself has felt the effects of his rebellion against God. Calvary stands as a memorial of the amazing sacrifice required to atone for the transgression of the divine law. Let us not regard sin a trivial thing. Now, for a lot of my life, I think that's exactly how I viewed it. A trivial thing. It's not that deep. I can do what I want here. It doesn't matter. But the things that we do have an impact. The decisions that we make have an impact. The things that we've done 5 years ago have led us to where we are now. The decisions that we made 10 years ago have impacted us and influenced us in the way that we are now. The things that we do right now are going to impact us 5-10 years in the future. What are we going to do? This is true in life, and it's absolutely true in the spiritual sense as well. These decisions have consequences. And we've talked about it before. Consequences are just the results of a decision. Consequences often have a negative connotation, but you can have positive consequences as well. All right? Everything that we do right now has consequences, either positive or negative. It's up to us to choose the best options that we have so that we can experience positive consequences in our future based on the things we're doing right now. We have to think about that. It's that delayed gratification versus the immediate satisfaction. Sure, I can do something and it feels great, it tastes great, it looks great right now, but how am I going to feel tomorrow? How am I going to feel a month from now, a year from now, and so on? You get the point. We cannot regard sin as a trivial thing. It's a big deal. I look back at Adam and Eve, and it's easy for us to look back in our 2020 perfect vision and our perfect spirituality. Yeah, right. And think, come on, man, you only had one job. You only had one job. You heard that before. Adam and Eve, it feels like they only had one job and they blew it. But are we blowing it today? We have the same job. We have the same choice. We can either accept God's love or reject it in the things that we do, in the decisions that we make. What are we deciding to do? We only have one job. Accept God's love. It sounds like an easy job, and it is. It's just that our self and our human nature tends to get in the way. So we got to make a decision there. But if you decide one thing, decide that sin is not a trivial thing and realize that the things that you do, the decisions that you make, matter. They do. Not just for your sake, but for the people around you, the people in your circle. It often goes a lot further than you think it does. So keep that in mind. I'm going to stop there for today. Like, there's a whole lot more that I thought I was going to get into today, but I think that's good enough. This is, another page, a couple pages here to get to the end of chapter 3, repentance. And like I said, this is a banger. There's so much more. This chapter ends with a flourish, I tell you that. But go ahead, like, subscribe, share, hit the bell once again so you don't miss the next video. It's the Buff Missionary. We out here, and we out. Peace.